I'm Sarah Jackson, host of Internal Comms Pro, the podcast, a listening experience choreographed to help you elevate your internal communications to the pro level.
And so investing in your employees' well-being, it's not just a fluffy, sunshine and unicorns thing. There's so much research about how it actually benefits the organization in tangible, measurable ways, leading to greater productivity, leading to, less turnover, less presenteeism, less absenteeism. Big lesson I've learned through all of this is you can't take what was working in the office and just make it virtual. What worked before will not work now. And I just am a lot more open. We had to just completely change our playbook.
That's Tara Davis, Director of Internal Communications for the American Psychological Association, or the APA. I love today's episode as it features Tara and I not only as two colleagues, but as two mothers. Yes, her new baby Finn even makes an appearance on today's show. Being a mom myself, I have so much empathy for all parents, especially new parents. And empathy is not only what guides Tara's mothering strategy, but it is also the guiding force in her new remote work playbook. With her office only blocks from our nation's capital, Tara talks about how she changed her internal communication the date of the insurrection. She even has an overwhelmed page on her intranet. And just like all parents who exchange good trade secrets, she is giving us all her secrets, her messaging strategy, her channel strategy, a huge list of remote work engagement ideas, her mind shift change around failure, and APA's model of what a psychologically healthy workplace looks like. We're delivering it all on today's episode.
Hi, I am Tara Davis, and I am the Director of Internal Communications and Staff Wellbeing and Engagement for the American Psychological Association.
Well, Tara, welcome to the show. You were recently, I believe, featured in Strategy Magazine. We're going to be getting into that article here in a little bit. But if you wouldn't mind, I know today we're going to be talking about maintaining culture and connection with the remote workforce. We're heading into 2021, and we're really not out of the woods quite yet on the pandemic. So we surveyed our listeners, and this was one of the topics that they still want to hear about. They still want to compare notes. And you just recently got a promotion too, did I hear?
I did. Yes, thank you. It was very wonderful. It kind of was official at the beginning of the year, and my role has shifted a bit. And so I moved up a level and got a promotion to be Director of Internal Comms, and I'm very excited to continue this work.
You mentioned your job shifted, and those shifts are definitely unearthed in a recent article. You were recently interviewed in Strategy Magazine. We'll link the article in our show notes. It's a beautifully laid out article. It doesn't matter what episode I'm doing this year for this season. Everybody is going to get this question because everyone wants to know, what was your journey like in 2020? Because everyone's story is so unique. I know on our prep call, we were talking about our children. I have a 12 and 14-year-old. Tell me about what your journey was like in such a turbulent year.
Thank you for asking. And you're right, everyone has such a different story. I think we all have our hardships and struggles, and also the things we're grateful for. To be honest, a lot of 2020 felt like survival mode for me. I'm a new mom, so I mean that both personally and professionally. I have an almost 16-month-old named Finn, and he is absolutely wonderful and brings my husband and me so much joy. But the day that I came back from a 5-month maternity leave was the day our organization decided to shift to full telework. And we have not been in the building since. So I remember my first day back from maternity leave. I had two Microsoft Teams meetings, which I didn't even know what Microsoft Teams was. And I apologize if you hear Finn in the background.
Oh, no, no apologies. I love hearing the sound of babies. By the way, I think that's been the best thing out of COVID that, hey, we have families and they exist and they're part of our world. So, Finn, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Well, you're amazing. And I do feel very, very lucky that APA has just embraced that. And in terms of my first day back, I had all these Zoom meetings, which I didn't know what that was. I had all these, Microsoft Teams meetings. I had to quickly learn technology. And the uncertainty of it all was quite scary. So when we got our footing, our office established new goals, which were to inform employees, to share tools enabling productive telework, to connect employees with each other and the organization, and to provide some tangible resources for managing work and life, which are not separate things and never were separate things, but as you mentioned, it is very clear now. So when our workplace changed so much, we just couldn't continue with the status quo. So we redid our intranet to make it more engaging and allow for more two-way communication. And we really started surveying staff to find out what they need. We update our intranet daily with resources. And one of my favorite things we've created is this page that we just call our overwhelmed page. It's overwhelmed with a question mark. And we have thrown everything that we can think of that people might need right now. So there's, stuff about emotional well-being. I just put up a bunch of things about political divide, and our office is located near the Capitol. So I, included all of these, articles about how to really deal with the images of what happened at the Capitol in the insurrection. And we have a lot of things about racism and how do you talk to your kids about racism. We have other things for parents like teleworking, or sorry, virtual learning, and how to balance that with their jobs, teleworking. So there's all sorts of cool resources. So while we can't fix the pandemic, there are things in our control, which are providing as many tools as possible to help our employees cope with it and build resilience. Once our employees were, ready to let a little gratitude in, we also started a page called Some Good News. We invite employees to share personal and professional accomplishments so that our staff can celebrate with them. And it ranges from our publishing department having bestsellers on the Amazon list to an employee having a baby, or one of my favorites, an employee and her husband celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary by donning their wedding attire even if they had nowhere to go, which was beautiful. And so we have things called our Coffee Connections program, where we will connect people with different people across employees across the organization, and have them get together for coffee or tea virtually. We have a pen pals program. And so, we're trying to, there's some things that cannot be recreated. And I think that's a big lesson I've learned through all of this is you can't take what was working in the office and just make it virtual. That's not how it's going to go. But we've, tried to find ways to, recreate opportunities for those informal conversations that would happen in the hallway or in the break room. And we kind of crowdsource that and just let employees, you know, create what they needed, and we just have the space for them.
It's such a great list of ideas, and I think that's what our audience craves. Like, what's everybody doing? And we'll put all these ideas obviously in our show notes. But I think what I love about this part of our conversation is, and I remember reading this in the strategy magazine article, is you talked about you made this shift instead of constantly surveying the employees, you now are meeting what they need right now. And was almost kind of a Maslow's hierarchy of needs now. Talk to me a little bit about how did you kind of figure out, all right, we've got to shift from these surveys to tackling, you know, the employee needs now, and how do you keep a pulse now on what the employees need?
Yeah, and I love, of course, that you mentioned the hierarchy of needs being a psychological association. It's perfect. I think that it, it was really a moment. Well, let me go back. So I said that I find my job very meaningful. And I did before, don't get me wrong. But right now, I mean, watching people and all of the different layers of stress that employees are going through, you just can't just communicate about, deadlines or, new programs or new policies or new platforms. Employees can't even begin to think about productive work if they're concerned about not being able to get groceries because there's a food shortage, or because they are African American and they just saw the video of George Floyd's murder, which was horrible. There are just these layers and layers of stress happening with our employees, which they're calling a syndemic, a set of linked health problems involving two or more afflictions. So, we've had COVID, we have racism, we have political divide, we have, as you mentioned, there are also disparities in terms of who is getting sick, in terms of who has access to care. There are all sorts of things that people are dealing with. I mean, the layers just continue and continue. So, we really just started to approach what is the bare minimum, just like the hierarchy of needs. What do people need to do their jobs? So one of the biggest things that we did was when we shifted to telework, we found that many employees didn't have a designated space to do their jobs. And, we work right in DC. So a lot of employees have, small apartments or small homes. We're in the middle of a big city. And so we, employees felt distressed about not having that space. And we've learned a lot about work life integration and the importance of boundaries. And a lot of our employees don't have that option because of limited space. They can't shut a door when they are working. So anyways, we realized we can't even begin to get them to think about their work and how to be strategic and how to be productive while they're teleworking if they can't even feel comfortable in their workspace. So our facilities team and I worked out a plan to deliver the home office to each employee. And so it involved our facilities management team and also our information technologies team. And I apologize if I have had bronchitis for about a month. We worked out this plan, and the three groups of us, we just kind of worked together and said, okay, technology wise, what do people need? Maybe they had a beloved, desk chair that really brings them a lot of comfort, or we let them buy new ones altogether. And our organization actually sent out sit to stand desks for all of our employees because, as you know, we're all sitting a lot more when we're teleworking all the time. And you really just can't expect an employee to work productively if they don't have a desk, which seems so obvious. But I think that APA doing that program was a big commitment to our employees saying, hey, whatever you need, it might seem small to us. It might seem like it doesn't matter when we're FaceTiming and you say, hey, I really need that yoga ball, but whatever you need, we're going to give it to you. So, well, it of course is important to communicate out, your strategic plan and your policies and your deadlines, because those things don't go away just because life is hard. It's also just important to recognize what people are going through. Just really meeting employees where they are and not acting like the objectives of our organization important? Of course they are, but so are people, and so are their lives and whatever they're going through. We recently had a huge financial deadline, and our finance team and I were working to make sure people did not miss this deadline. So we had a countdown clock on our intranet page, and we had, different reminders and all that. But then the attacks on the Capitol happened. And as I mentioned, our office was a block from that. Our employees live near there. It was a very heavy time for our employees. And so, it didn't mean that the financial deadline went away. But I made a decision that for that day, the day following, we were only going to have resources for our employees on our intranet. We weren't going to just act like it didn't happen and keep like pushing deadlines down their throats. So on our hero component of our homepage, I had resources with our overwhelmed page. I had resources our EAP had shared about talking to someone about what was happening. And we just kind of held off on the finance information because we wanted to know employees we care. We see you, we know what you're going through, and we're in it with you. And for me, it's like not only do you get more buy-in and engagement and all of the things that you need with internal comms if you address your employees as entire people, but it's really just the right thing to do.
Listening to this, you think it's common sense, but since for centuries, the default hasn't been to focus on someone's whole self. It's professional at work and you leave your personal stuff at home. And now that COVID has integrated all that together, this is such a great model, I think, for internal comms to approach it with empathy and approach it with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and approach it with the whole person. I just think it's such a great example. It's just such great insight. I love this so much. Talk to me about, and you've got all of these wonderful messages and now resources, and you're approaching it with empathy. In Strategic Magazine, you were quoted saying the most successful communications are consistent, frequent, shared via multiple mediums, repeated as necessary, and as transparent as possible. Can you break down for our audience kind of the steps on how to do that? Particularly if I'm completely I'm drowning here at work. How do you do that with cross-channel sort of strategy? Is there, our audience likes, templates and visuals, and is there a way to kind of paint an organizational framework of how would I actually do that?
I'm not going to act like it's the simple solution, but I think the most important thing that has resonated with me is that I don't have to recreate the wheel with each audience. So a great communications plan has the same core message, but it's just crafted differently depending on the audience, the timing, the platform when you approach new communications. You think, what is the message I'm trying to communicate? What do I want this person to hear? How do I want them to hear it? And how do I need to message it in a way that this audience can understand? So it's kind of like thinking about your audience using different languages. So what do you want them to get out of this, and how do you need to communicate it to them so that they understand it in their language? So I think my biggest role is really about making sure that our organization is sharing those messages in one voice, that all those different messages sharing across the organization towards different audiences, towards, on different platforms, are centered around a unified vision. So as my role has of being director of internal comms has grown more, I've been, working with offices across the organization who will reach out to me and say, "Hey, I want to roll out open enrollment. How can I help? What are the barriers from people submitting their open enrollment? Do people know about it? Are we putting it in the right places for people to see it? Is it confusing? Is it overwhelming? Have we provided different opportunities for them to understand this information?" And I just loved trying to kind of hold all the different pieces and make sure that they are following the same vision, following the same voice.
Circle Broadcast is a proud member of the Internal Comms Pro Collective. During trying times, you can't afford to have remote employees in the dark grasping for information. Now, you know how Tara was talking about her cross-channel strategy. Well, you can make executing that strategy so much easier using Circle's cross-channel employee communications tool. You can be sure that employees are seeing the right message at the right time on the most convenient channel. To find out how Circle Broadcast can help your organization better manage your change communications, visit circle.com/ICP. Now, in this next part, Tara discusses her mind shift around failure, and she also talks about APA's 5-domain model of what a psychologically healthy workplace looks like. And she gets into how connecting employee wellness with your internal comms impacts the bottom line. Now let's jump back in. I love that framework. And I think it also complements this, what I'm feeling and hearing you say, this whole person empathy strategy. It's almost like employees have their own love language and to be in tune with how they can receive it. One of the things that I loved hearing, and I hear this so much now, and the article referenced this, was your mind shift around failure. Talk a little bit about that.
I think that when we, pre-pandemic and when I was in the office, we would have events. There were a lot more events, obviously, and just things that we wanted to be very polished and almost safe. I would say things, were more, we kind of played it safe. And then, our world just changed so much. And it's like, what do you do with this? And as APA, just to give a little context, APA, as a leading psychological association, our mission is to use science and psychology to benefit society and improve people's lives. So what's really great is I get to take that great work that my colleagues are doing in the community and with healthcare professionals, and I get to apply it to our employees. And so when we first shifted to telework, I'm thinking, okay, we are in the middle, well, in the beginning of this pandemic, and people are upset. And what does the science say? What does the science say about really hard times? And something the science says is that gratitude is very important to get through really difficult times. It's important to take note of the things that are going well. And so we asked employees to record a video or write a short message about the things they are grateful for that we were planning to compile and send out. It sounded like a great idea. I mean, gratitude is really important for building resilience. Well, out of about 550 employees, I'm pretty sure we got two responses. Which is might be the the worst engagement or participation we've ever had. I'm kind of like, so what's happening? Like, certainly these people have things to be grateful for. And, I realized that people weren't ready to be grateful. They were mad, they were angry, and they wanted time to sit in that anger. And they wanted, our office, the way that we could support them is just letting them sit in that anger. And so, that's really taught me to listen carefully, pay attention to cues and culture and context. And, what worked before will not work now. And I just am a lot more open. We had to just completely change our playbook. And that's going to mean failures, or what's beautiful is those failures also just really, really inform your future decisions. Like, you'll in the future, you're going to have that moment where you're going to be like, wait, maybe I shouldn't do that. For example, we thought about doing something where we invited employees to share pictures or videos of their home office. And then right before we did it, we thought, wait, there's going to be, our chiefs or our high level people who have these great environments. Like, maybe they have a huge house, or maybe they've been able to, go and live at the beach or whatever. And then you're going to have employees who don't make the same amount, who are maybe annoyed that they're, in this little apartment room, or, for whatever it may be, the socioeconomic differences are going to come out and make people bitter, or feel just completely tone deaf. And so, before we did that, we kind of thought, oh, wait, maybe that's not the best idea. So, instead, we, invited our employees to share their favorite coworker, be it a plant, or your bag of Doritos, or your cat, or whatever it may be. But anyways, it definitely, I think it's just so much growth can be had. I mean, there's so many times now that I'll have an idea and then I'll think, ooh, am I considering this? Am I considering this? And that's come out of those things that were complete flops.
Yeah. We did something, and I'll share this, I'll send a link to this. We did a tiny campfire, and we sent our team members a little pack of graham crackers, a tea light, and some marshmallows, and a Hershey's chocolate bar, and we did storytelling because storytelling were connects kind of the head and the heart. We prompted our staff with some powerful questions, and it elicited some really personal stories, and stories we probably would have never heard if we didn't choreograph kind of that moment. So I'll send you we just did a blog post about this, ways to kind of connect and to create that feeling that you're so craving. So I'll make sure I share that with you. But and that's the great part.
Totally speaking my love language there.
So I wanna this which brings me, I am all feelings. I mean, Mr. Rogers and I were pen pals, truly legit, we were. And so yes,
Okay,
so
that's gonna have to be we're gonna have to have our own little, virtual coffee tea break because I'm gonna need to know everything about that.
yeah, yeah, we were pen pals. I'll have to share that story with you, the Mr. Rogers story. Yeah.
I think my
But
son's watching Daniel Tiger right now as we
you're
speak.
kidding. You're kidding. Oh my gosh, I love Daniel Tiger.
So
So
we are definitely gonna talk further about it. I mean, I definitely sing to Finn. It's such a good feeling to know you're alive. We sing that to him every single morning.
well, and he was just I think Mr. Rogers was the ultimate internal communicator. I really believe it. And so if we just yeah, if we follow his way, I mean the way he made you feel virtually. I mean, he was the first one to do that via screen, right? So I think if we can follow those examples, and this brings me to this question. So there's sort of this debate out there that internal communicators shouldn't be taking on, the health and well-being sort of initiatives that gets them distracted. And in the article that you were featured in, you're quoted saying, "Treat your staff as humans first, employees later," which is exactly something I think Mr. Rogers would say, by the way. And hearing about these self-care initiatives that you encouraged, tell me about this. Where do you stand on this debate?
Yeah, so that is such an interesting I guess I to me, it's mind-boggling to me because I can't see them as being disconnected. And maybe that part of that is my background. When we talk about culture, we're talking about employees. And, we use internal communications to impact that culture, to reinforce that culture. So we've got internal comms, which leads to culture and is related to culture. But then when we talk about culture, what are we talking about? We're talking about employees, we're talking about people and their well-being. And so investing in your employees' well-being, it's not just a fluffy, sunshine and unicorns thing. It used to be seen that way, and I think some organizations still see it that way, but there's so much research about how it actually benefits the organization in tangible, measurable ways, leading to greater productivity, leading to, less turnover, less presenteeism, less absenteeism. I have so many stats that I could share, but even when they look at like the stock exchange companies, the companies that prioritize employee well-being, Soma Analytics found that they outperformed the others by 10%. And so, like, even we're talking about revenues, like, we're talking about actual money. It's not just like, oh, well, if I invest in Tara, maybe she'll be happy today and maybe she'll get her job done. No, we're talking about you invest in my well being, I perform better. I stay at my organization longer. So there's so many actual concrete outcomes that come from investing in your employees. And those are all the same things that we're trying to accomplish with internal comms. I mean, they're working towards the same goal and the two work together. So, I mean, to me, without taking on and addressing employee well-being in your communications, they can seem sterile and tone deaf. And I mentioned a few examples of that. I mean, if the day after the Capitol insurrection, I just hounded people about a finance deadline, people would just be, appalled, or I would feel completely disconnected, which makes them lose their trust in me and what I'm trying to share with them. So, we're in the middle of a pandemic that hasn't happened since 1918. To not acknowledge that when you communicate out decisions or policies just completely removes the human element. And so you may have been able to get away with not touching employee well-being in the past, but it's not possible now if you want to keep your employees. APA has a model of what a psychologically healthy workplace looks like. There are 5 domains. There's employee involvement, employee recognition, health and safety, employee growth and development, and work life. It says balance, but I prefer integration, that all feed into organizational functioning. So how your organization performs, and employee well-being, which directly affect each other. So, implementing these programs, policies, and communications that improve your employee well being aren't just good for the employee, they actually improve organizational functioning and financial success. And then in our model, the foundation of all 5 domains is actually communication. So, top down and bottom up, and you're using those communication methods to energize your employees, to connect their work to the organization's mission, to increase satisfaction and fulfillment in the workplace, and grow commitment to the organization. So, especially in a time right now when employees are juggling more roles than ever before, and employee engagement in a state of flow is especially difficult to achieve, internal communications is vital. APA's Stress in America, we put out a Stress in America survey every year, and it showed that Americans are facing higher levels of stress than ever before. So to not acknowledge that, I just don't understand why anyone would listen to your other messages. Without the human element, you're just another mass email that is sterile, that is irrelevant.
Wow, and there you have it. Well, what a great note to end on. This has been such an amazing, heart-filled, joy-filled, empathy-filled, just special conversation. And I can't thank you enough again as a new mom with bronchitis, remote work, and we obviously put Finn to sleep because I hear nothing. I was going to be so excited to hear a baby on the episode. So, but I can't thank you enough. What great information for our guest. If people want to get a hold of you, is it okay if they connect with you on LinkedIn if they wanted to dive in a little bit more in some areas?
Of course, I would absolutely love that. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this, and I am loving what I get to do right now to help employees and people really through this time. So please connect with me. I would absolutely love that.
Well, like Mr. Rogers said, it is a beautiful day in the neighborhood now, particularly after hearing Tara's empathy-based remote work tips and strategies. Now, of course, we've got you covered. All of today's information has been beautifully designed in a handy remote work playbook guide that you can download for free at internalcommspro.com/show notes. Stay with us next week as our journey to uplevel your internal communications to the pro level continues.
Internal Comms Pro, the podcast, is produced by the Internal Comms Pro Collective and proudly supported by the Circle Broadcast Suite, an entire suite built for internal communicators. Learn more at circle.com. And don't forget to visit www.internalcommspro.com/show notes for our free resource guides. Thank you for listening.